Chapter 8 focuses on anti-Semitism within the United States during the 1930s and 40s, and also on Father Charles Coughlin and his radio personality that caused a large anti-Semitic movement throughout the United States. He first expressed interest in economic issues, since this was during the time of the Great Depression, but this slowly transitioned into more of a political movement as his distaste for President Roosevelt increased. He attempted to have someone run for presidency to be his candidate, and that fell through, and he ended up leaving radio after that, but came back in 1937 with a new theme to hold the attention of his listeners, which turned out to be anti-Semitism and Jews. He believed that the economic ills within society were because of the Jews, and the oppression of the nation was the fault of the Jews as well. He felt that the Nazi persecution of Jews in Germany during 1938 was a great thing. He felt that the Jews had introduced communism to Russia, and in turn communism being a bad thing, he felt that killing the Jews as a defense against communism was a rational thing, and even though doing that was bad, it was for a good cause, so he felt that it was relevant and it mattered. Many Catholic leaders renounced him as his comments had degenerated into irrationality, and he started having very distasteful and vulgar things to say about the Jews that led to the Jews not being able to go out on the streets and walk around. They were being bullied and threatened, and so much violence was happening. Men, women, children could not walk the streets without being jumped by younger kids to younger kids, adults to adults. Father Coughlin believed that violence was the appropriate response to the social ills that were instigated by Jews. His followers took suit, which led to the violence I mentioned earlier. Many radio stations had stopped airing him, but he continued with his magazine because once the radio station stopped, he wanted to still get his word out. He asserted that the Jews were the reason for World War II, and in doing that led to a serious investigation by the FBI because the government was finally done with a lot of the things that Father Coughlin was saying in this chapter about the Jews and the government and his power. He was just very much a power-hungry man, and he felt that he was doing this for he felt that he was defending us against the invaders of our spiritual and national rights, and that everything he was saying about the Jews was right, and that we needed to defend ourselves and protect ourselves. The FBI eventually found out that he was working for the Nazis to spread anti-Semitic propaganda throughout the United States. The church did threaten to defrock him if he didn't stop his actions. He eventually retired in 1966 and said that it was a mistake to enter into politics. He took deontological ethics weren't taken into consideration when he believed Jews were causing the social ills of the country, so in turn violence was the appropriate response. That was not a very good thing. He didn't follow any of the 9 principal cores of journalism. Wasn't truthful. He didn't have loyalty, no verification, neutrality, power, comprehensive relevancy, no conscience. A contemporary connection, I believe, would be Trump and the immigrants in today's society. I think he sees a lot of them as scapegoats for bad things that are going on in society today, and some of that might be true. There might be a lot of issues that immigrants are at fault for, but not everything, and I think he's just trying to use that as a scapegoat. So I feel like that's a lot of what Father Coughlin was doing with the Jews. I try to stay out of politics just because it's a very touchy subject with a lot of people, but that's just the most contemporary comparison that I could feel. He's putting people into concentration camps, basically, at the border, and it's very similar to what Hitler did with the Jews, and that's kind of scary to me, but that's the most contemporary thing I feel like I can compare it to. I'd love to hear what everyone else thinks. So my question for the end of this is, how could Father Coughlin have approached the situations he was in differently? Should he have done something differently? Do you think he could have done something differently? Or did his consumption of power and his hatred, his vicious hatred of the Jews, prevent him from thinking rationally?